Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's important conversation, the Nimble Navigator, leading with agility in an unpredictable world. I have a feeling that many of you joining today's webinar can really relate to the feeling of being a leader trying to navigate all of the challenges, the changes, the shifting landscape that's happening beneath our feet. And so we are so fortunate today to be here with our three panelists, who I will introduce shortly, to talk about this and to talk about how this has been done in three different industries, three different sectors. I would imagine that there's probably a lot of similarities in some of the leadership styles and strategies. And there's also probably some unique challenges that each of you are facing in your industry. And so this is going to be an important conversation. For those of you joining us today who aren't familiar with the National Conflict Resolution Center, we're happy to have you here. We started this series, this webinar series of navigating the uncharted about 2 years ago. And the idea was really to give workplace leaders and employees tools to navigate the issues that are constantly popping up and that we are asked to respond to. So I don't know about you, but that feels more important than ever to me right now at this moment. And so we have had different webinars that have tackled things on overcoming political polarization in the workplace, managing, an intergenerational workforce, and even tough conversations like changing trends in DEI and more. So that is all of those webinars, just so you know, are available to watch on our website at any time. But for today, I want to be able to jump right into this content. Now, there will probably be some great questions from our audience members today. If you have a question as we go through, we will have time kind of at the end of the conversation for a few of them. Feel free to go ahead and put that in the chat, and we'll be monitoring that throughout. And given that we want to respect everyone's time and keep this to 45 minutes, if there are questions we don't get to, I want to let you know that we will be following up with an email that will actually have the answers to those questions from this panel. So if we don't get to your question today, please know we will work on getting that answer and sending it out to everyone. So feel free to put those in, and we'll kind of take it from there. All right, so it is my pleasure today to introduce you to our amazing panel. We have Burgundy Allison, who's joining us from the Annie E. Casey Foundation. We have Peter Kim, who is joining us from Thermo Fisher Scientific. And we have Autumn Saxon Ross joining us from the National Recreation and Parks Association. Thank you all so much for being here with us today. All
Thank you
right,
for having me.
you're so welcome. So I know that we have all been bombarded this year by changes to the workplace landscape, seemingly, I would say, on a daily basis. We've had to navigate things like the emergence of AI, changes to DEI policies, which we kind of mentioned before, tariffs and uncertainty in the economy. 2025 has really brought about a lot of changes and a lot of questions for employees and certainly for leaders who are being asked to respond to those things. I certainly know at NCRC, we've had to respond in the moment sometimes. Like we planned, this content for today, but we're going to pull that because now it's not as relevant. It seems tone deaf compared to what just happened. Or,
Mhm.
we need to jump into this conversation and provide some answers. And there's that balance of wanting to respond, but not overreacting too, right? So how have you, as a workplace leader, navigated these challenges and stayed nimble as things shift beneath your feet? And Burgundy, I would love to start with you.
I knew you were going to start with me.
You felt it.
I did. I did. Um, for me, it's been about taking into consideration person, role, and person in role. And
Mm,
so current circumstances really felt very personal to me. I'm a Black woman, right? And there were things that were happening to women who look like me from places where I'm from and places like where I live. And so that was extremely personal. And so I learned very quickly that I had to take care of myself, which meant that I needed to allow my team the time to take care of themselves as well, right? And then I had to check myself and role in the work that I do. What is my job, right? So there's the person and the personal dynamics that I'm dealing with, but then what is my job? What am I tasked with doing? And how do I do that and balance that with how I'm caring for myself personally? And then again, extending that to the folks that I work with and the folks that I lead, right? Like, how are they making sense of the work in this moment, and how their own personal experiences in the moment are impacting how they show up in the role, which takes us to person and role, right? How are you balancing all of these things, and how is that showing up in the way that you show up for your work? And so for me, it really started with myself. And I'll admit, I told my team, my colleagues, and I told my bosses, there was a moment during the course of the year that I was just listening for my name, because that's all I could do, right? While I was trying to balance what was happening, what these things meant for me, my own family, and the way that I live, and then showing up in role. The most that I could do at one point in time was listen for my name. Now, I was going to have the answer when my name was called, but my capacity was very much limited to being able to respond in that moment, and making the folks that I work with, who report to me, comfortable with that, being transparent about where I was and extending that same grace to them, and being honest, managing up, and being honest with those folks about where I was at the same time. And so that's where it was for me. In terms of the work that I do, it was really shifting from being the expert to a learning posture, because we had to really brace ourselves for what our partners were experiencing in the places that they were doing the work. We don't do the work, we support it. And the best way to support it this time was to shift from, philanthropy tends to show up knowing everything. This time we didn't know. And what we needed to do was be in a learning posture so that we could understand what our partners were experiencing, so we could best respond and support how they were having to respond in a moment. So that's really how I approached it this year.
I love that, moving to a learning posture and really taking that time to listen to the community. That's the huge part of what you do, and just not assuming we know what
Exactly.
people need. You have to ask those questions and show that curiosity. Thank you. Peter, how about to you? How have you been navigating this landscape?
Thanks, Ashley. And it's great to be here. I think you said it well. This year has been very noisy
Mm,
externally, and it's hard not to get caught up in the noise because every new event seems unprecedented. So, what are the signals that we can catch or look for or hear to help us navigate? And one of the ways that we have articulated what it means to be agile, and we've landed on that signal. Because we can't anticipate what's going to happen, we can only respond in a way that allows us to remain focused on our purpose and our mission. So for us, we focus on defining agile leadership behaviors, and it really comes down to five essential qualities. One, needing to pivot quickly. I think sometimes we get frustrated because we have a plan, we start our year, we have this plan we want to implement, but then the environment changes and the situation changes and things that we didn't anticipate happens. So not getting so attached to your plan, pivot quickly when things change. Two is you got to really be aware of what's happening, situational awareness. And that means talking to a variety of stakeholders, listening to our colleagues, our customers, getting as much information to help you make sense of this situation and knowing that being aware of the situation is very important. Three, I think Burgundy said this really well, is being curious, ask questions like not just the what, but why? Why might this be happening? And having that conversation, then being able to have excellent communication, listening, and then closing the loop, feedback loop. It's important to get a lot of information quickly. But then if you're in leadership roles, our colleagues are expecting us to say something in this moment. And we may not have all the answers, but they would value hearing back. So making sure we close the loop, and that's part of listening. Listening is more about communication is more about listening than it is speaking, and then making sure people feel that they have been heard by closing the feedback loop. And then certainly challenging the status quo, things aren't going to be the same. And it's okay. We have to embrace change with some positivity here and be realistic at the same time. And nothing is, no one has a magic wand to make things be better. So be real, but your attitude is a choice. How can we remain positive? And then I think last thing is empower your teams, the people that you work with and work for, help them take control, help them take care of themselves. I love what Burgundy said too. You got to focus on the person, make sure they feel it's okay to take care of yourself so that they can show up for others. So that's how we've been navigating through this very uncertain time.
Mm. I love how specific the five essential qualities are. There's some real thoughtfulness behind that. And that I think is so helpful to have something to look to, right? And guide you as you go through this returning to just a company or an organization's values. And how are we going to do that? Thank you. Autumn, you have the unique position of supporting people in the public sector from all over the country who are public facing with parks and recreations departments all throughout the United States, all having different experiences. How have you navigated this not only with your own team, with NRPA, but also, with your members?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me. And it's just really good to hear from both Burgundy and Peter and hear some of the same things that we've been working through and trying to use to make sure that staff and membership are feeling supported and kind of have a good grounding as things are shifting and blowing. I went to see Wicked this weekend, and I'm just thinking of like our staff and all of the things that are moving around folks because that's what this year has felt like. And so I heard you all talk about, like communications and the feedback loop and transparency and the personal and professional. And one of the things that, as a workplace leader that I ensured when things happened, you can't take care of others if you're not taking care of yourself. So one of the first things that I did, and I try and, shout from the mountaintops, is the importance of however you care for yourself to double down on that. So for me, I have kids, it's a 5 to 6 a.m. workout. Like that is something that I have to do to be able to stay grounded as things are getting thrown and moved and shifted. So for me, that's what helps me be able to come in ready to be agile. Because a day of me working out in the morning and a day of me not working out in the morning really determines productivity, like my outlook. So I would just, continue to shout to folks, whatever that is for you, is to double down on that. Even if it's for 5 minutes, whatever it is. So that's the first piece. But for us, being the chief education and equity officer in 2025 for association of 28,000 folks has really in that personal professional, we and I had to communicate with staff that it has to be separate. Me as Autumn and my feelings and what I want and what I don't like and what I won't stand for is valid. And as someone that works in an association, we have to do what is best for our members because we have members that are serving 10,000 folks in Montana and members that are serving 10 million people in New York City, right? And so I think for me in that communication and that transparency, a lot of it has been, we have federal grants. And for us, that's 14% of our revenue. So a lot of it is communication and making sure folks understand that. So we had to say that was 10 positions. So we have to change our language on our website. So this is a specific example. We had to change our language on our website, not because I like it, but because it's important and we have to make sure that our members can engage with the language we use. And so come to me and tell me how angry you are on Teams, or let's talk about it over coffee. But just really grounding folks in what we have to do and helping people recognize sometimes you have to separate that in service of others.
Separate that in service of others. Yes. Now, you've all kind of touched on this, but I think I want to drill down on it just a little bit more. And this has to do specifically with your teams and how you're bringing them along in this process. You know, at NCRC, we're called in a lot to work with teams who are maybe in conflict. You know, we do a lot of training and communication skills and conflict resolution, but we also go in and we do like group facilitated dialogues where we'll go in and work with teams who are not functioning well at the moment. And a big thing I think that we've seen this year, a big part of it is people not feeling like they're being brought along. They're not feeling like they're part of the conversation. And there's building resentment around that, right? Or policy changes, they don't feel like they were ever consulted or discussed. And so, drilling down on that, and Peter, I'll start with you this time. How have you communicated with your employees? Thermo Fisher is a huge company, so there's your team. Then there's the communication to the broader, employee base. Have you involved them, engaged them? It's hard. They're so big. There's so many. So what are some strategies that you've used?
Yeah, thanks, Ashley. I'll start with my team and make a plug for the NCRC modules. We introduced the art of inclusive conversations, and that's been very essential tools for us to equip our team members with some practical strategies to get to the underlying needs. You know, one of the best things that we learned was you're really not fighting about what you're fighting about because that's the surface level, but it's these underlying needs that are not being met, and we aren't addressing them because things get in the way, our biases, our cognitive biases, our conversational styles. So I think that was a really helpful, pragmatic framework for the teams to be able to address the unmet needs that are the source of conflict. I think for our colleagues, we have 120,000 employees around the world. And as you can imagine, there are a lot of different ideas and opinions, identities, needs, and wants. We want to create an environment where everyone feels that they can bring that to themselves, to the workplace, but also remind our colleagues why we exist. As a company, we exist because of our mission, which is to help our customers make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer. We're here to serve our customers, make the next cancer discovery. Let's remind ourselves why we show up to work. And that's more important than all of the noise that you hear in a variety of different countries. And so where we have focused on our leaders is help our colleagues understand, make sense of all of the messages in a way that feels relatable. So one of our big go-to for our leaders is communications, and going back to how important to over communicate and then contextualize the communication depending on your audience. So that's how we're trying to, it's not easy for us to have a one size fit all because we're in so many different countries and so many different products. So, you know, having clarity of the purpose, why we exist, and then helping our colleagues see how their work contributes to our mission.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I really can appreciate, Peter, how you have to be very nimble when you're working it with an international base as well, because we think of so many of the impacts happening in the United States, right, that are happening to our employees, then that is a majority of your employees. But there's so much of this is impacting what's happening globally, and we really have to consider that and meet people in those different moments and in those different ways. Autumn, how about for you? How do you feel like you've been bringing everyone along?
Yeah, I think definitely agreeing and lifting up what Peter said, like always centering the mission, like we are here for our members, or, reminding folks why we're all here. And I think the communication piece is big, but also what I found is kind of modeling, like sometimes I'll ask folks or we'll have conversations like, look, right now this is going to be raggedy. So that's one of my favorite words is like, hey, I'm telling you this right now. This happened or this happened. And so what I have been finding with my team, just kind of modeling not this, kind of idea of a perfect leader. I'm the person, I'm the chief, I'm this person, I'm supposed to do that, but kind of coming in like my kids didn't sleep last night. I'm a bit messy right now, but I'm trying to get it together. So showing that with them, but also kind of being aware, as the leads of teams, we don't always know who's kind of going back and forth. But so for me, a lot of it is being very aware and paying attention to people as they're communicating, looking at Teams chat, looking at people, how people are talking to and reacting to each other. And there was a specific example of just like a meeting got a little, I don't want to, it not necessarily aggressive, but you could feel something was happening between two folks. And so what I've started practicing is afterwards, Teams and people and saying, hey, would you like to debrief? I was kind of feeling something coming through the screen. I'm available this afternoon. If you'd like to, let's have a conversation. And so I've been doing that consistently this year and have been finding that people, like I'm a person that I seem very level-headed, but that's because I go behind the scenes, do all of the things, all of the, processing to be able to come back. And so for me, it's giving my folks that space to kind of be raggedy and I didn't understand this and she said this and he said this and I don't
Mhm.
understand. And then ask them like, okay, like are we ready for a conversation on solutions or do you want to do this tomorrow or later on? And then kind of help them decide what they want to do and then ask them, okay, I would like for you to do this, and then bring me in later. So, not I'm going to have the conversation or I'm going to talk to their supervisor or their boss, but on that level, like, okay, it sounds like maybe you need to ask them something or bring this or pick up the phone and have a conversation. Our rule is, if you've gone back and forth more than 4 times over email, you now need to call someone. So that's like a standard rule in our team as well. So just really trying to model not this perfect thing is leadership, but leadership and observation and connecting with people after to give them that space to kind of debrief and figure out how to keep things moving, kind of in a productive way. So that's really been helpful over the past year when emotions are just high.
Yeah. And I hear a lot of transparent leadership there in what you're saying. Just saying, one, it's going to get messy or be messy. We're going to have to work through this together, naming it. And a huge part of that is not sticking your head in the sand and pretending like all these things aren't going on, but saying they are. We've got to work through this. And that can really exist at the micro, which is two employees that you see are getting at each other, and the macro. Hey, everyone, there's a huge economic impact that's hitting us right now. We need to talk about that and how that's going to look. So I really appreciate that. How about for you, Burgundy?
Well, the past year created a great sense of urgency around our mission. And so what it made necessary was really helping people to manage their expectations of the foundation and how we were going to show up and respond. We are a, a team of folks that are heavily mission driven. And so everyone is coming with purpose in their work. And so really helping people manage the level of expectation for not only foundation, but how they show up as individuals in the work was a huge part of it, while they're also balancing whatever kind of personal experiences they're bringing to the work. So that was a huge one, the whole ride, and kind of reminding folks that the work doesn't stop, right? We were already doing the work. We're going to continue to do the work. How we show up may change because we may have to respond a little differently, or our partners may need something different from us. But that is that learning posture that we're going to take so that we'll be ready to respond accordingly, right? So there was that. I think there's also been opportunities for connection, so that folks really felt like there was space to opine and to vent and to feel and then get back to the work, right? And so we found these ways to connect. We have a text thread, right? And we've got the Zoom chat. And there are all these opportunities for us to say the things, get it out, and then return to the work of the mission. And so, you've got to be nimble and flexible and creative in how you create these different lines of communication, methods of connection, because there are some things that have to happen very personally. We're not going to have certain conversations on the Zoom chat. Like we probably should have that on our personal cell phones where we said what we needed to say so that we could return back to the work at hand. And so really just being as nimble and open to being able to read the room and understand what's happening between the folks that you're working with, so that you know how to shift and know how to create those spaces so that there is opportunity to get healthy enough to now refocus, right? You felt that, you didn't like it, I didn't either, but we got to do it, right? And so really being able to do that, and also remind folks of their sphere of influence in their role. Like, there are ways for you to show up and be impactful in a way that's aligned with your purpose and mission, that is not in opposition to the way that the foundation feels the work should be done, right? And really being able to draw those lines. Autumn talked about that before, that there is how you feel, and then there's the work that you do, and being able to create space for people to explore that, and really have a better understanding of how to balance those two.
The work continues. That's a great takeaway. The work continues. We were doing it before, we're doing it still. Thank you for that. So, for our audience members, I want to open it up. If you have a question that you have been eager to ask the entire panel or one of the panelists, given their industry, we invite you to put it in the chat. And some of you have already started doing that. I've seen some questions coming in. Thank you. And so we invite that. And the first question that I've seen that I think is a great question is, what do you see as the greatest challenge for workplaces in the next 5 years? And how are you planning to address it? So that's a big one, I know. Yeah, so what do you see as the greatest challenge for workplaces in the next 5 years, and how are you planning to address it? And Autumn, I will start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think, for us, and what I'm trying to share with my staff, because in the new year we start our budgeting process, is for folks to really think about innovation, adjustment, and pivot in a no increase of the budget way, right? Like, for us as especially as a membership organization for local municipalities, if there are issues with taxes, and we know that folks' budgets are slowly but surely decreasing. We don't see that for about 18 months to 24 months when it comes to our membership and our conference. And so I see that being something for us to navigate. And so for right now, and we learned that from 2008. And so from right now, it's just reminding folks, like, we can do things, we can always try and improve, but those improvements should be a good bang for the buck. Just as someone that's shepherding other folks' membership dollars, it's important for us to do that. I think that's one piece. Another piece, which we have kind of seen since the pandemic, is really, how do we keep people connected in person and online? Like, that is something that we're seeing as folks are coming into the workforce and folks leaving, a difference in communication styles. And for us over the next 5 years, I think it's going to be really important for those of us that have been working for a few decades to really adjust and change and bring folks along, so that there are some common communication techniques and how we connect with each other, that includes text, that includes Teams, but also includes phone calls and face-to-face conversations, and kind of knowing when and where and how. So I see that being something that's just communication styles, and trying to make sure that folks you have it going for all folks in the workplace. That is definitely something that we're working on, and I see not getting easier in the next 5 years.
Absolutely. Yeah, Burgundy, what would you add to that?
I would probably say the intergenerational workforce. I think, I'm a Gen Xer, and Xers are the new boomers in the workplace. And we are really struggling to make room for a younger workforce. And it's a push and pull that we have not figured out. And that, to me, is the thing. I talk about it all the time, about both creating space and relinquishing some of the tight reins that we have, and reminding folks of how it felt to be a younger person in the workforce, where you are actually creating a new workforce in real time, and it's butting up against what work has traditionally been. That, I think, is going to be, for me anyway, the greatest tension in the workforce in the next 5 years.
Yeah, we hear that so often. And again, we see that come up a lot is in terms of the conflicts that we see when we go in. We actually did a webinar, I want to say about a year ago, with Dr. Megan Gerhardt, and it was on intergenerational workforces. And she wrote a book called Gentelligence that was really about the she calls them lazy stereotypes that we give to the other generations that are not our own, and how those become blocking issues for us when we're trying to work together. So I think you are absolutely right, Burgundy, that's something that really as a workplace leader, you've got to be looking at and addressing head on. Peter, how
Absolutely.
about for you? What do you think?
Yeah, so for a private employer, one of the big challenges we see is the impact of AI in the workforce.
Hmm.
And I think that point concern was really made home to me when I spent time with my nephew. I don't have kids, so I have nephews. And he's 28, and he was sharing with me his very concerns about remaining relevant in a world of AI transformation. Will I have a job? Will
Mm,
I have a job that pays enough so that I can have a sustainable income? Where will my opportunities be in a landscape where AI may be doing a lot of the things that I can do or should be doing to learn the ropes? How do I remain relevant in a rapidly shifting world where AI seems to be taking over a lot of my daily responsibilities and duties? And as a company, we're embracing AI, we're introducing AI, we're encouraging AI. Our challenge is how do we bring the workforce along with us in this journey? Not let anyone feel like they're being left behind or replaced or substituted away. I mean, that's a big challenge. We want to create this embracement of change. And
Mhm.
so having an attitude where AI is going to help me versus hurt me is where our focus is, because we want everyone to be coming along in this journey, because we really do think AI will be a great game changer insofar as productivity, performance, and everyone can do their job much better and still have the desired work-life balance without having to do more. Why don't you do more, less with tools that can help you do less and still maintain a high quality of life? So that's our biggest challenge is how do we introduce AI in a way
Mhm.
that's responsible to our responsibilities, to our workforce, to our customers, and to the communities in which we operate in.
Yeah, and Peter, you are with Thermo Fisher Scientific, so it doesn't surprise me that you're more advanced than many other industries might be in the adoption of AI in some ways. But I think it's something that's going to impact all of us within the next 5 years in ways that we might not even imagine yet. And again, our last webinar that we did was with Cheryl K. Goodman, who we talked about the hope in the era of AI and how to find the good in it because we always reflect on it in this kind of scary way, and that's very real. But one thing that we talked about a lot is we've got to talk about it. We've got to tell our employees what our plans are with it, how we expect them to use it, what we're doing with it. And when we don't, it leads to a lot of confusion, uncertainty, fear. So yeah, so I really appreciate that you're looking ahead to that and recognizing that it's going to be a challenge. It's going to be really challenging to communicate with
Mhm.
people who fear that they're going to lose their jobs or their livelihood, what they're good at, and we get to tap into the good parts of it too. So it's just got to be that conversation. We've so many good questions coming in. I love this one. I want to ask it to you all. You are clearly nimble navigators here on this panel. You have shown that already in this conversation that you've been able to pivot and do things effectively for your organizations and for your teams. How do you help coach someone who's struggling to be agile? How do you do that? And Peter, I'll start with you.
Yes, I love what Autumn and Burgundy said around taking care of yourself first. And that requires a level of self-awareness and self-management. And when you have so many chaotic changes, it's easy to allow yourself to slip into a bad mood. And we all know how we respond and react when we're in a bad mood, in a mood of despair, anger. We probably aren't making the best decisions in that moment, and maybe one that we might regret. So being aware when you're in this mood, negative mood, and taking the time to pause, to redirect, manage, I do yoga. You do your physical, whatever you need to get yourself back into a mood of curiosity.
Mm,
And then eventually to get to a place of contentment, because when you're in a state of contentment, you can see more clearly where the opportunities might lie when there seems to be so many obstacles in front of you. So I would say, I think that would be my recommendation is when you see people spiraling and spinning, help them to reflect on where they are in their mood, help them take the time necessary, pause, get some air, talk to somebody, friend, laugh, and then come back to something, is they'll still be there. So it's better to take that time to self-care and self-manage yourself first.
mm,
And very often, I don't think people are expecting their leader to tell them to pause and take a moment to take care of themselves. They're expecting maybe something more punitive, like, why didn't you address this? Or, something that is so, yeah, that's really important. Burgundy, how about for you?
Um, I I'm like the queen of I don't know. I lead with I don't know. And I'm very clear, like when we're starting to develop strategy, I'm quick to say it's okay to not know. And I also encourage folks to not plan to the T, to leave room for things to happen, for things to shift, and for you to not know or to be incorrect in your assumption. And so I'm not the ironclad planner. Your plan has got to have room to breathe for it to be real because you're thinking about it. But then when you get on the ground to where the work is actually happening, you're going to learn how circumstances impact your plan, and your plan has to be nimble enough to be able to shift as necessary. The other thing is, and I talk a lot about this, when you are looking to bring people onto your team, I am as concerned with whether or not a person can swim as I am with what's on their resume. Because you're going to come on and we're going to onboard, and then I'm going to push you into the deep end. I need to know that you can swim. And so it's great that you've been A, B, and C, and you've got all of these skills. But if swimming is not one of them, then this isn't the team for you, right? Because part of being nimble is being able to swim and knowing that even as the water gets deeper, you can tread and you're still going to get to the other side. If you get in there and you can't breathe and you start to panic, then we're not going to get to the completed mission. And that is of less value to me than what's on your resume. And so one of the things that I try and do is I'm thinking ahead, right? Like not necessarily how do I coach people to be nimble, how do I choose folks who are?
Mm.
Mm. And it sounds like you're also really leading by example. Being the queen of not knowing
Oh
is
yeah,
really showing that it's okay. It's okay not to know as long as we're talking about that. Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Autumn.
Yeah, I would say, providing opportunities for them to explore and learn. Like, I love a good plan. I love consistency, hence the 5, 6 a.m. workouts every morning. Like, I love a good plan. And I've learned how not to spin out when things come for that plan, or if something doesn't happen, or if someone doesn't do something. So I would have to say, when I started this job, it was a big leap for me to I avoided management for a very long time. So I went from managing 3 full-time staff to managing 20. And so for me, it was this idea of I have to figure out myself. And when I know myself, I know the triggers, but also, I got an executive coach. And I learned about like Enneagrams or different personalities, or like what are things about you, but also the side of if this is what you do and how you react, here are some of the things to moderate it or give you a chance to pivot. And so for me, that was a big thing, was recognizing and being comfortable with all of my not so pretty things, and recognizing as a leader what it can look like when you deal with it. So I would suggest if there's someone struggling with it, like how can you give them professional development? How can you help them with a coach? How can you support them in doing, a leadership style or a personality style? You have the strengths finder because there are true bits in there. And then continue to bring that up and help them because I would have to say that that was one thing that really helped me in that transition was really knowing and accepting all the things that aren't pretty and fun about myself, but also how that is a strength and how I can take those things. That's when I learned that sometimes I just got to shut it off and leave, right? Like that's a thing about me is that once I hit it, I hit it. That helped me recognize that, yeah, okay, you got to go. There is no talking. There is no anything after a point. So I would suggest professional development because that is something that we're doing, kind of really knowing folks, because you're not going to change it, at a certain age. It's how do you navigate it and use it as a strength.
And it shows such investment in them to
Yeah.
know that you're investing in their professional development. So you send so many positive messages at the same time. Absolutely. Well, we have so many good questions coming in, and as I promised at the top of this webinar, we will be answering them. So we're going to put the ones that we're not getting to today in a follow-up email. With just our last couple of minutes here, I do want to make sure that we share a couple of resources with you because I like to think of it as a party favor. In addition to the great conversation that we've had today, we will be sending out a link to the webinar that you can share or rewatch, be inspired by when you're having one of those tough days. But also wanted to share with you, if you haven't yet seen this, that we have curated a entire library of free resources for workplace leaders, NCRC has. And so if you scan this QR code, you'll be able to access that library where you can see all of our past webinars, now including this one. You'll also see that we do weekly videos that are just meant to be helpful tips in 90 seconds. What's going on that week in the world? Here's a helpful tip to address it. We also have things like research papers that we've produced or white papers. We have a code of civil discourse on there. So there's just a lot of things that we produce at least once a week and sometimes more that we put onto this page. And so if you're interested and that would be helpful to you, we just really encourage you to tap into it because we believe at NCRC that is our mission to provide people with the tools to navigate these uncertain times. And we're really proud to be able to do that. And then the final thing that I'll say is for any of you, speaking of professional development, who are interested in maybe some more of that for yourself or for your teams, we've developed a certificate program specifically for workplace leaders, helping to navigate the things coming up in today's workplace. And so we really, oops, sorry about that. We really talk a lot about how we can get through all of the changes that we're experiencing in today's workplace. And we have sessions coming up all throughout 2026. And so I encourage you to take a look at those as well as tap into these free resources. With that, I want to say an enormous thank you to our incredible panelists, Autumn, Burgundy, Peter. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us. I know that you have probably experienced one or two bumps in the road because that's life and that's leadership. Your transparency to be able to come and share those with us, as well as really what you've seen work matters. And it makes me feel encouraged knowing that there are incredible workplace leaders out there like you, helping us all through times like this. So thank you for joining us today. And thank you everyone for tuning in today. Keep doing the great work that you're doing out there. And we're almost in 2026, so we're going to see what that one brings. All right. Well, thank you all so much. Have a wonderful rest of your year. We'll touch base soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.